Good morning, everyone. We're going to begin our Children's Families Seniors Committee, and we're going to start with our public comment. And I just want to apologize. I know Supervisor Cortez is a little behind schedule, but I wanted to begin because I know we have a number of folks who need to know if they need to stay or go and get everybody organized for the day. So if I could invite up Scott Largent and Susan Bassey in whichever order they'd like to come up, would be great to get us started this morning.
Good morning, Cindy. How are you doing today?
Good morning.
Okay, brought kind of some props today, I guess you could say. It was neat yesterday, the process of moving the encampment over there. I kind of showed up there earlier in the morning. I do appreciate you getting involved, Cindy, and I really appreciate Dave Cortez getting out there with his truck, pulling back, the shirt and, starting to haul and move stuff. It was pretty neat. It's sad that these people keep on having to get kicked down the curb, and it seems like our union for the county provided a little bit of property for about a week. It was nice to see our sheriff there. It was nice to see the California Highway Patrol. It was nice to see a good amount of people there, but who was missing? Not a single San Jose police officer, police chief, assistant chief, none of them were there. Susan Ellenberger, of course, running for supervisor, was there, and Don Rocha, of course, is a councilman. I'm kind of biased with Don Rocha because I think he was all part of gassing the homeless and with the whole RV sweeps. And I kind of, when you see sympathy like that in somebody going out there, he's familiar with the scam and what's been going on in the homeless community. I kind of bring, of course, all the information that I have, how the city of San Jose and the county were gassing the poor and taking their motorhomes and cars and creating that problem that we have right now. I don't know if you know this, Cindy. Well, of course you do. I was maliciously prosecuted by the city attorney's office for standing up for my humanity, fighting for my motorhome, my home, my property that they took from me. I was never able to have a dignified burial for my father because his ashes were in my motorhome. To add insult to injury, they never allowed me to access my property. They laughed at me. They told me, get the F out of that lobby at the tow truck place. Then they told me they received an order to destroy. Nobody would help me. I begged and pleaded and told them I needed my property. I was physically thrown out of that lobby over at San Jose Police Department, physically thrown out. None of these people would believe that their staff was treating me like this. Fortunately enough, I had a phone with a camera on it. So what I've done now is I've started to plaster all these videos up on YouTube to show how I was treated. In that lobby over there, Manny Vasquez, which has a video up on YouTube right now, has now been removed from that lobby. They now have a good group of people in there, what I've been asking for years. They were publicly shamed online to do this, okay? And I'm glad they're getting it done. They finally put in a numbering system. I guess what I'm trying to get at right here is in the police report for that Bullhorn arrest is the section where Garcia, Chief Garcia, is my accuser, okay? They quashed the motion and would not allow him to testify. If I was able to address my accuser, I could have possibly gotten a factual finding of innocence. When I pulled the court copy, the section with Garcia in there, half of Officer Tompkins' police report, is missing. It's not in there. They rigged the court trial that I had to go through. And this was all fighting for my property. You see what the homeless community has to deal with fighting for their stuff? They probably wouldn't be over there in that area if they weren't taking all their things. So
Thank you, Scott.
thank you. Brought Officer Ganova's award today, too.
Good morning. My name is Susan Bassey, and this morning Scott Largent and I are not in sync on what we're discussing. I've been a Santa Clara County resident for almost 30 years. When I was newly married and moved to Gilroy, my husband had a secret. And the secret was that he was sexually molested by somebody associated with the Catholic Church. I had to deal with that in a marriage for 30 years. My children had to deal with my husband not wanting to tell. At one point, we decided to put one of our children in the same Catholic school that had abused my husband. And that was a point of contention in my marriage. And that same year, the Spotlight report came out about what priests were doing in our society. That's not okay. All of you knew, or should have known, or should have spoken up. I should have spoken up. We should have done something, and we didn't. And the lawyers got busy, and they started writing settlement agreements. But the people who were abused started becoming the abusers. And that looks like domestic violence, and we don't talk about that. We've gradually changed our words to say domestic violence to intimate partner violence. But what that really means is the children are watching. They're watching the adults. They want to know what we're doing. When I finally went to family court because my husband filed for divorce, I thought, finally, I'm going to get help. The courts will help me get a fair settlement and provide for my children. I'll get child support like I deserve. I'll get my half of my community property. I didn't. Instead, I found a court that was nothing like they describe in our civics court classes. And each of you in city government, in elected positions, you all say the courts are not your problem. They're not your jurisdiction. They absolutely are. Department of Child Support Services said to me when I was trying to collect money for child support for my son and I had opened a claim, they said, yeah, we should probably set aside that order that Judge Grilli did improperly. Yeah, we know Brad Baugh is an attorney in this area that hides money for people who are abusers, people who are domestic violence abusers, people who are sexually assaulting their children. They know Brad Baugh is doing this. They know the games he plays, and they don't do anything about it. A DCSS attorney told me that. And we don't put more money into DCSS attorneys to help children and to collect child support that the federal government says we're supposed to collect. Instead, we have a victim services unit. And if you try to go get victim services and you're being prosecuted for a photograph, they won't talk to you. I actually have rape immunity. Anybody can rape me right now, and the DA will do nothing about it because they're prosecuting me for a photograph. They won't help me collect my child support, and they won't go after the lawyer that committed perjury and filed false documents in my child support case. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We're going to move to our consent calendar. I'm just going to tell you what we're going to recommend for consent. And because Supervisor Cortese isn't here, what I'm going to do is just let folks know what I think we're going to be able to do here. And that is, we're going to put item 6, school link services, item 9, extra help usage, item 10, DCSS competitive grants report. Wait a minute, actually. I don't think that's accurate. Let me just look at the, yeah, item 10, thank you. The receive report from Department of Child Services, and item 11. Oh, perfect timing. So, so I'll just give you a minute. What I was just going to.
Need a motion on it?
Yeah, if you could.
Okay.
So I'll take a motion to move items 6, 9, 10, and 11 to consent, and just ask the staff on the competitive grants report. We have a couple more questions, but if the staff would just work with my staff would be great. And so we have a motion.
Yes, so moved.
I'll
Thank you.
make a second. And those items are all put on consent. So then we'll move on to item 4. And this is to receive a report from the Office of the County Exec and Fleets and Facilities relating to the Vietnamese American Community Services Center. So if we can have the staff come forward, who will be reporting on that.
Roger Sui, Deputy Director of Facilities and Fleet. I have here today, we have Gina Zhang, Chief of Construction, and Roberto Mendoza, the Capital Project Manager for this project, who will actually be presenting the slides. We're here to present the slides and also answer any questions that may be asked.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Good morning, Children, Seniors, and Families Committee. My name is Roberto Mendoza, Project Manager on this VASC project, giving you your status report. We continue at this point to engage the services of the design team and in efforts to design a 37,000 square foot facility that delivers integrated services to our community. What has emerged is a 3-story solution. Our first floor would house senior services, senior nutrition services with full-service kitchen, as well as multi-purpose fitness, as well as meeting spaces, computer access, and a triage place where people can be directed to the adequate services that they seek. Our second floor is comprised primarily of clinic, primary health and behavioral health clinics. And the staff areas are confined primarily to the third floor, with some additional meeting rooms available to the public as well. Since our last report, we've also selected the services of a CM at-risk firm that will deliver this project, see it all the way through construction. And we've also held our first community outreach event. As a next step, Facilities and Fleet and the architectural design team will engage the community in a follow-up community engagement event, which is to happen sometime in mid-October. And currently we're tracking on schedule to deliver this project. Thank you.
Much. We have a number of speakers here. What I want to do is if you could just go back to the slide and leave the slide up with the schedule on it. Was that the second? Yeah, just to leave that up as people speak so that we have a reference point. And I'm going to invite up the speakers on this item. Each of you will have 2 minutes to give your feedback. And Van Lan, I'm going to assume you can translate if folks need help with that. So I want to invite up Sun Pham, Trong Vu, Tiet Tran, Con Nguyen, and Vu Tran. And please feel free to come up in any order. And if you need translation, we'll double the time. But if not, then come forward. Welcome.
Xin kính chào toàn thể quý vị. Tôi là Phạm Hữu Sơn, Chủ tịch Ban đại diện Cộng đồng Người Việt Quốc gia Bắc California. Hôm nay chúng tôi rất sung sướng đến đây họp để cảm ơn toàn thể quý vị đã quan tâm đặc biệt đến cái sinh hoạt cộng đồng của chúng tôi.
Good morning, member of the community. My name is Pham Hữu Sơn, Chairman of the Vietnamese American Community and Coalition of Northern California. I'm here to thank you for the project.
Kính thưa quý vị, cái trung tâm cộng đồng này rất là quan trọng đối với lại cộng đồng của chúng tôi, và chúng tôi hy vọng rằng cái trung tâm này sẽ mang đến nhiều cái dịch vụ cho cộng đồng của chúng tôi trong tương lai.
The Vietnamese American Service Center is a critical and the most important project for our community. So we hope that you would provide a lot of services in this center for the community.
Chúng tôi cũng hy vọng rằng tất cả những cái diễn tiến của cái công việc này sẽ được phổ biến rộng rãi đến cộng đồng của chúng tôi một cách rộng rãi hơn, để tất cả mọi người được hiểu cái sự quan tâm của quý vị đối với lại cộng đồng của chúng tôi.
So we hope that you will have a lot more opportunity to invite the community so that they know what's going on, what's happening with this project, and we really appreciate all your effort.
Và tất cả những người già rất là quan tâm đến cái vấn đề này, và hy vọng rằng họ sẽ nhìn thấy cái thành quả của cái kết quả của sự giúp đỡ của quý vị.
Especially for the elderly population in our community, we all very anxious to know about the project as soon as we can. So thank you so very much.
Dạ, một lần nữa chúng tôi xin thành thật cảm ơn toàn thể quý vị.
So once again, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Xin kính chào toàn thể quý vị. Tôi là Tuyết Trần, cựu hội trưởng Hội Phụ nữ Việt Nam Hải ngoại Bắc California.
Good morning. My name is Tuyết Trần. I'm the former president of the Overseas Vietnamese Women Association.
Kính thưa quý vị, chúng tôi rất cảm ơn quý vị đã lo cái trung tâm cộng đồng. Nhưng xin quý vị lưu tâm đến giới già của chúng tôi và các em phụ nữ, trẻ em và phụ nữ về sức khỏe và y tế. Và cũng xin quý vị thực hiện cái trung tâm cho sớm chừng nào tốt chừng đó để chúng tôi có nơi để sinh hoạt.
We would like to once again thank you so very much on this effort. We would like to especially bring your attention to the services for the elderly, the women, the children regarding the health care.
Và chúng tôi xin thành thật cảm ơn quý vị nhiều lắm.
Thank you so very much.
Good morning. My name is Trung Vu, and we come here for a few times. Have a meeting talking about the Vietnamese Service Center. We thank for board of the supervisors that help our community have that center. But we want to remind that is in the design. We would have some point at least. The people that know that one is help for our community for the Vietnam. So that's we want the designer that is have some point. That's let the people know it. And one more thing that's we want to ask. That's about thanks America. That is a monument that will be have it in the center. Thank you very much.
Kính thưa quý vị, chúng tôi đã theo dõi rất là nhiều những cái phiên họp về trung tâm sinh hoạt cộng đồng và chúng tôi chỉ có xin được lưu ý về vấn đề vẽ cái kế hoạch của cái dự án này và đặc biệt là cái dự án của Thank You America bức tượng có một phần ở trong cái trung tâm này. Xin cảm ơn quý vị.
Thank you.
Good morning. Dear President De Cortes, Supervisor Cindy Salve, and honored member of the Board Supervisor. I'm here. My name is Vu Tran. I'm Director of Vietnamese Director of Association of Vietnamese Elderly of the Bay Area. I'm here today on behalf of General Bing and honored member of my association, General Bing. He's got a surgery and he didn't feel well today, so he cannot attend to the meeting today. However, he would like to express he would like to say thanks to President De Cortes, Supervisor Cindy Salve, Dr. Smith, and honored member of the Board Supervisor for on the effort, support, and the commitment for the Vietnamese American Service Center. And by the way, for the Vietnamese American Services Center, we would like to have Vietnamese American soldier statue and one flagpole for yellow flag with 3 stripes. And that was promised from President De Cortes at former Vietnamese American prisoner politics in San Jose. So that's about it. Thank you very much.
Kính thưa quý vị, chúng tôi hiện diện ở đây với tư cách là thay mặt cho ông cựu thiếu tướng Nguyễn Khắc Bình. Hiện ông có vấn đề sức khỏe nên không có thể hiện diện ngày hôm nay. Chúng tôi muốn nhắc với những quý vị trong cái quỹ ban này là về vấn đề phải có cái cột cờ, có cờ vàng 3 sọc đỏ và có bức tượng của những người lính, những người chiến sĩ Việt Nam Cộng Hòa và đồng minh.
My
morning, all of you. My name is Khan Nguyen. I am the Vice President of the Vietnamese Community Coalition of Northern California. I come here today on behalf of General Jacob Ben and Admiral Cheng Cheng. They want to say thank you to all of you and effort to help us to build the service community. The first thing is try to remember of you, the flagpole. We really need that because that's the symbol for the community of us live in California. The second thing is the monument of the unknown soldier. They had to sacrifice their life to give freedom and human rights for the South Vietnam during the Vietnam War. 58,000 American soldiers had sacrificed their life, and 100,000 Vietnamese soldiers have been died, sacrificed for the country. We own their life. We need that to pay respect to them. Please put that flagpole. And that's the two things General and Admiral Cheng Cheng want you guys remember that and put that in agenda. The other thing is the Vietnamese advisor for the service community service center. We need that too because the community needs to get involved with the management of the service center. Excuse me, could we give me one minute?
Would you restate what you just, the last thing you said? I
Last
couldn't hear
thing
you.
is the Vietnamese group of advisors work with the director of the center to manage that in order for us to bring up the issue from the Vietnamese community to the management of the service center so we can work together, make the thing go smoother.
And that's once it's developed?
All the issues we have, so they know what's going on with the community, what the community need for to improvement of the services.
Wait, xin anh nói rõ là cái advisory đó là nó trong thời gian xây cất hay là sau khi xây cất?
No, we need that during the system running after we finish the project. The system running, we need that advisor working with the director of the center.
Got it. I understand the point. All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes, okay. Those two things they need didn't happen.
Okay, and I'm
Please.
sorry, I'm going to wrap up your time just because I
All
want to
right,
be fair
thank
with
you.
everybody.
Thank you very much.
So a couple things just from we already finished the public comment, so. No, I understand. Thank you. So let me just make a couple of comments with the staff, and then just to make a couple of requests. First, whenever we present, I want to make sure we include a list of services that we're going to be that are going to be in the center, because every time I've been to a meeting where we don't have the list, we create a concern that people don't know what's going to go in the center, and we've had a lot of meetings with the public about that already, and so as much as that's been refined, we should present it. Okay? I think this is I've raised this a couple times, but I'm just going to put a stake in the ground to please make sure that happens. Second, that I really appreciate the aggressive schedule. I think we have a lot of seniors, as a matter of fact, General Ben and Admiral Chan, who can't be here today because we have our seniors are getting older, and so I have some urgency also about getting it moving, and I appreciate that you both do as well. I've heard you both share that urgency, so thank you for that. I think that the one thing that I would like to make sure that we break out a little bit more, and maybe this is something we can do as a follow-up to this meeting, is the process by which people will give feedback to the design. There seems to be some genuine confusion about how that process works, and I think it's because we have a lot of members of the community who haven't participated in that before. So what I would take is the January, the January and summer portion, and just kind of dive deeper into, we're going to have meetings, this is what's going to happen at the meetings, this is that iterative process, because I think it's really hard for people to understand that you're looking at the skin of the building and what it looks like on the inside now. So just to be more clear about that. As it relates to the issue about giving feedback, I think when the operations are established of the building, I think we do have to figure out a way to make sure there's ongoing input from the community. The thing I will just say to the staff, and this is an issue I've raised with the community in general, is that whatever kind of input we get has to be very broad, because we don't want any individual or any group really feeling left out about what happens in the building. And as a matter of fact, while I think we will have nonprofit participation in the building, the lead agency will remain the county, because most of the services will be county services. And I'm happy to have a longer discussion with anybody about that, but we have been really clear that you have only presented to broad groups in the community, not subsets of it, because we don't want anybody to feel left out. And I just want to highlight that, because it's really important that every step that we take is one that is both inclusive and meaningful for the community in the very long term. Because this building, we're building it today, but hopefully it belongs to the community for generations to come. As it relates to the issue about the flagpoles, I think Supervisor Cortese, I know they've raised a couple times that you raised this, and so I just wanted to give you a chance to address that, and then I thought we'd talk about the art separately, the monument.
Yeah, I know we've had in community meetings a discussion about the Vietnamese heritage flag being available to fly in front of the building. I think the only point that's being made is there should be, in the design, just make sure there's 2 flagpoles so it doesn't become an ugly retrofit later trying to find a place to put another pole. I don't know what tradition is in terms of county when we have freestanding buildings like this, how many flagpoles we have, or we have one for the county, one for California, one for the United States of America, or none of the above, or what. But obviously the county some years ago adopted a board resolution allowing that red and yellow flag, the former flag of the Republic of South Vietnam, to be re-characterized as the Vietnamese American heritage flag here. And so I think it's in keeping with that spirit for a Vietnamese center like this that would help identify it very clearly with the community as we've said many times, although open to everyone, clearly having cultural competency identified with that flag is really almost a brand at this time, a brand for the Vietnamese community to recognize. So I don't know if anything I've stated is incorrect, but hopefully those aren't bad facts. Thank you.
So could you just talk about what we do? I'm trying to think about clinics and other things when I've seen flags and when I haven't, but what is our normal flag presentation at an individual building like that, a county building?
So typically we fly a flag. We fly the U.S. flag, higher flag, and then the California one and the subset of that flag.
But do we build in the poles at most of our external sites, or just some of them, or not?
Just some of them. We don't put them on all.
And do we have a policy under when we do that and when we don't do that?
I'll have to look into the actual policy. I don't think there is. It's just pretty much mandates when you put flags up, but I don't think there's specific a policy as to which
when we put the
flags.
poles. Okay. So are we including the multiple flag poles now for this site?
I don't recall seeing a flagpole on the design of it. There are banners on the side of the building that was created for some of the artwork that can incorporate some of the community's, I guess some of the heritage. When we looked at the building, we were trying to be all inclusive. We're trying to provide art in there that's kind of sensitive to all.
Yeah. I think if we could, just because if Supervisor Cortese, if you're comfortable with this, I think as we're moving forward with the design that the flagpoles are actually a pretty important component of that, and we should just do it now, just so that we're not, I think the point Dave raised about putting that in later might be a little bit of a challenge. So if we could start there, and I don't know I know we have a lot of flagpoles out here, and I heard what you just said about the American flag and the California flag. So I don't know if that's 2 or 3 but I would love a recommendation from you about what's appropriate.
We can do that.
Great. Dave, does that meet your needs too?
Yes, yeah, I think just at this point, making sure the flagpole's there, and that's also consistent with the public comment.
I think as it relates to the external statuary and the art, what I would like to do is, and I don't know if we had already decided to do this, but were we addressing that? Was the architecture and the external components of the building and the internal components of the building going on its own path, and then the external statuary going on a different path?
So in regards to artwork, we're incorporating artwork into the building itself, just as public art, which means different pieces of the building could become artwork. In regards to the statue, our direction was to provide space for a future statue in a prominent location, which is now done in the site plan. It's near the face of the street.
And is that the bulb out? Or
Yes,
the circular?
the round
Okay.
circular pattern.
So on that front, just again for the community to understand, we're going to proceed on 2 paths. One, to talk about I'm using the term statuary for the external plaza piece, and one path for the actual design of the building that will be inclusive of artwork. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Okay, and that's understandable for everyone, so they'll each have their own path. And then on that, just to go back to the art for a minute, are we using a 1% standard on the art in the building? Is that our?
Yes.
Okay. And is that 1% standard based on, on the budget that was discussed at the board meeting a couple of meetings ago by Dr. Smith?
On the construction budget, yes. Not the project budget, but the construction budget.
And I know I'm going to circle back and have another conversation with Dr. Smith just to better understand the differences between those two delineations. But just to be firm, it's a 1% on construction is what you're looking at right now.
Correct.
Great. Those are my questions. Dave, did you have any others?
No, I don't. I appreciate the community input, and we'll, look forward to seeing these issues develop. We got a little way to go here before we get down to final details. But I know as far as the statue that's being referred to, there was originally a plan. I think most people in the room are aware, prior to the service center project being launched, prior to this effort, there was a request that the community be provided similar space to self-fund, through community fundraising, a statue like that was similar to one down in the Garden Grove area on this premises. And I know facilities in the county executive's office identified about 5 possible locations for that at one time. And then, of course, when this project came along on Center Road, a number of people from the community suggested, well, that would be a more appropriate place for that type of artwork. So whatever process we went through here, which was nearing completion, I think has to sort of start over again on this site, clearly, in terms of community input and public process on that, just to make sure everyone's still on the same page. I assume there will be different ideas, like always happens with colors and art and design, but we can cross that, during the community meeting process somehow. We're going to have to, I'm sure, institutionalize a process for that. And I'm not even familiar with what process, when we were over at the city, there was a very regulated public art process that really put a lot of the final recommendations in the hands of the community and the artist, less the politicians. So I don't know that we have a statute like that here, but it may be something we want to work on in the meanwhile, because I'm sure this won't be the last project, where we have a public art component that's external like this, that requires community input. And then the only other thing I would say is on community input, hopefully we can have perhaps an evening or weekend community meeting sometime before the end of the calendar year. Just looking at this, we're going to be getting into, it looks like January 2019 is sort of where that kind of thing is targeted. And whether that needs to be sort of an off-site CSFC meeting so that both of us can be there, something along those lines. I think that'll be expected of us, of course. But I also think, to your extremely valid point, that it takes a lot of work to be all-inclusive with a very large Vietnamese community that we have, over 100,000, and broken down into a lot of different organizations and groups. It's going to take some legwork to pull people together. So we probably ought to start planning that in a couple of months. And if it's targeted for January, fine. If it's February, fine. But I think we should probably pick a date pretty soon, Chair Chavez.
Oh, good.
Not
Okay.
necessarily right now, but sometime
Okay.
soon.
I was like ready with my pen.
Okay.
And that may be something that both Amy and Tebu and Kathy in my office can work together to start to work with you to make sure we do that outreach. And actually, that's a great idea that the January meeting be held out in the community. That's a really, really good idea. Because I think what we've been using this building in part because we have these great slides and the like, but maybe we can find something external that's more closer to where we're going to be building, that we could find a place to use, maybe a high school or something.
And just while it's on my mind, if it is an early 2019, if it dovetails with materials that we might have available for the census effort, that we can try to utilize that same meeting for that purpose. I remember 10 years ago the Vietnamese community really came together and did a tremendous job helping us disseminate information around the census. And I know that's not on the agenda
No, that's
today,
a
so I don't
great
want to get
idea.
into details, but
Yeah.
I just wanted to say we could work with the departments that are, Mr. Campos and the departments that are putting effort into that, and try to make it a meeting that covers as much ground as we can.
That's actually a really good idea. And actually, what I would just say to John Mills, that maybe we go ahead and make it a full CFCS meeting out in the community that we can put this and census and a couple of other things that are more community oriented on the agenda. That's actually a great idea. Thank you. Okay. The only other thing I will just mention is that what is coming back to the board in, I think it is coming in late October, is a recommendation on our arts policy that will have that 1% art discussion in it. And staff had early on recommended that we look at contracting with the city of San Jose to manage those processes, especially the external processes that you just discussed, because they do have some expertise on that. And I really do like that idea, so we're not forcing staff, because I actually think that's a very different skill set than one we've had to really grapple with. And that would be more for the external statuary, not the building, obviously. Okay? So that'll happen concurrently, but what we probably should make sure of is that Sylvia Gallegos is the lead on that for us. So since she's working with you, we can check in with her on how we are on process and timing for that. Good. All right, then we'll receive the report and move on. I want to thank the speakers for coming and giving feedback. And please tell General Ben and Admiral Chan we are thinking about them and really appreciate you being here for them. All right, so we're going to move on then to item 5. Let me just find my notes real quick. I didn't defer 5, right? Oh, here I go. Learn, Earn, and Progress. If we could get the staff to come forward, welcome.
Good morning, Francesca Ledra, Director of the Department of Family and Children's Services.
Sorry. Maricela Martinez, Project Manager, Department of Family and Children's Services. Good morning.
Good morning.
Gilbert Moody, Program Manager for the Family and Permanency Bureau.
Great, welcome.
Good morning. Today we're here to provide you some information about a pilot program we are proposing, a year-round paid internship program for foster youth ages 18 to 24, as well as request the expansion of the Summer Bridge program, which would include local colleges as work sites to enable participants to receive payment in the upcoming Summer Intern and Earn program in 2019. I'd like to essentially start there in terms of the Summer Bridge program. Our foster youth have the opportunity to participate in the Summer Intern and Earn program, but they have to choose between working or taking summer college courses. And if we were to expand the Summer Bridge program, it would mean that our foster kids, youth, young adults, would not have to make that choice. In other words, they could opt to take summer college courses versus work, and we would be able to provide them with payment so that they can continue their college courses and or catch up or advance in that. That's a very brief information with regard to expanding the Summer Bridge program. The Learn, Earn, and Progress Foster Youth internship pilot, was born out of the Summer Intern and Earn program, which was incredibly successful this summer with serving 150 foster youth. It's a 6-week program, and in those 6 weeks, the youth received case management, enabling them to gain employment. However, 94 of our foster youth participants did not either receive full-time employment and are not taking college courses. What we discovered is that 6 weeks is a very short period of time to provide foster youth with multitude of needs, the extensive case management to be able to have them be employment ready. Pending funding approval of approximately $600,000, the LEAP program would serve current and former foster youth ages 18 to 24 who have completed the Summer Intern and Earn program in 2017 and 18, but were not connected to employment or post-secondary education. So the eligibility will also include having verifiable history in the child welfare system, current or past out-of-home placement, and residing in Santa Clara County. Our goal is to make this inclusive to those youth who did not qualify for other programs and be able to target students with a more robust work experience. Again, the emphasis or the difference is the time period that we would be providing the LEAP program. It would serve 30 foster youth within a year, 6-month program over a time of 1 year. So it would include intensive case management, which would be a critical element that will make the program different than the others. Again, the Summer Intern and Earn is 6 weeks, and this would be 6 months. The key would be that our employment counselors would be able to provide youth-specific case management caseloads with very low ratios of 3 to 4 per counselors. As you may know, many of our foster youth have multi-layered challenges and need to be addressed on a deeper level. And this low caseload would allow our employment counselors to spend the time necessary to address each barrier on a deeper level and provide creative interventions both individually and in the intern placement. We are currently anticipate using our existing employment counselors to implement the program, but we are requesting support for a classified management analyst or associate management analyst to oversee the administrative support of the program, including processing time cards, training the youth, and processing employment documents. An additionary cost would be used to pay the salaries for the youth. We would provide them with transportation, such as bus passes and other incidental expenses, such as uniforms or clearance checks. Should we receive approval to start this pilot program, we are currently working with employers to confirm their interests in this program. We have, in fact, set up orientation work sites and providing trauma-informed training. We feel that this is an opportunity to prepare employers for next summer should there be any issues in not being able to provide this LEAP pilot program. We're holding a meet and greet open house event to be able to engage with employment partners. With regard to the Summer Bridge Summer Intern Program, that is already in progress, and we are working with the local colleges to establish them as work sites. Again, the goal here is to be able to use that program starting next summer. We hope to recruit youth for the LEAP program. Again, we would be using the last two summer intern and earn cohorts, 2017 and 18. For those youth that have not been able to obtain or maintain employment or are not attending post-secondary education. Our goal is to reach out to these youth, and at this time we have actually identified 15 youth that would be eligible and meet the criteria to participate in this pilot program. Training is in fact a fundamental component to this program, and we are again planning a 4-week training to help prepare the youth for everyday life on the job. Workshop planning and preparation has begun. Again, we haven't received any funding for this, but we think it's an important piece, and we are using existing resources to build a strong model for this LEAP program. Do you have any questions?
This, on packet page 16, I think it's page 5 of your report, there's a recommended year-round paid internship budget.
Yes.
And you said about 600,000 earlier. It's,
yes.
I guess, 584,974 is the exact
Correct.
total? Okay.
Yes, that's the exact total.
And most of that is the salary and payroll for the interns themselves, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
The county actually becomes the employee of record.
Right. Yeah, no, that's fine. I just want to make sure
Yes,
the bulk of it's going to
to the youth
the youth.
for their salaries.
And some of it's transportation incidental, and then the management analyst that you talked about, which is an added FTE over and above what we have appropriated right now.
Correct.
Okay. That's helpful. That's a good chart. Just want to make sure I wasn't following that chart when I was listening to your presentation until the very end. So I want to go back and make sure I was matching that up with what I just heard.
Yes.
Is there, this is just maybe a philosophical inquiry, going back to something you just kind of said that isn't related to that chart, college versus work. Is there a both and philosophy there in terms of, I know you were saying one of the indicators here is if you have these youth and as enumerated who aren't in either, aren't doing either. I kind of wanted to, inquire when you said they need to do college or work, if we're also trying to emphasize both to where that's practical. I mean, clearly when the interns in our office, the interns in my family that that have been transitional age youth have somehow managed to have some kind of a paid gig and then also attended school.
So the Summer Bridge program, if a foster youth, if any college student wants to take a summer course, those are very intensive courses, jam-packing a whole lot of curricula in a very short period of time. And it's very difficult for a student, regardless of them being foster youth, to really dedicate the time to that course and do well and also have a job. So we don't want our foster youth to have to make that choice, right? Do I attend a college course to either catch up or advance,
right,
or work? And so we're thinking that that Summer Bridge program really allows the foster youth to perhaps get ahead. In terms of the LEAP program, the Summer Intern and Earn program, the hope is that we are making connections and that the employers are in fact employing the youth after the Summer Intern and Earn program, or the youth are in fact then returning to college courses. For 94 of those youth that participated this year, they didn't have either or. So there was a need to think how we can better support our foster youth to do one of two things, either be gainfully employed or provide them with activities, provide them with internships that will perhaps pique their interest to want to return back to school, giving them a little bit more to think about through an intern program.
No, yeah, I think that's great. What you've said so far sounds like a good strategy to try to reduce the number from 94 down to a smaller number.
Yes.
Obviously, it has to be voluntary, so you're not going to be able to mandate it, and I'm sure we'll have some, some who aren't takers.
Right. Well, 15 already expressed interest. So 15 of the 94 expressed interest.
Good. Going back to I guess I'm just feeling like there needs to be, while no mandate that you have to work and go to school, that we shouldn't foreclose the option of part-time work.
Agreed.
And then what you're talking about, essentially full-time school. I understand, the rigorous nature of packing a lot into courses, especially summer courses, but I just think that needs to be an option, an option that can be tailored. I would imagine a student in that mindset would say, look, my priority is I want to get these classes done, and let me see what that schedule looks like, and then if I can intern 2 days a week, that's not when my Monday, Friday classes are.
Right.
I'm interested in doing that, or not.
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure we aren't saying,
one or the other.
yeah, we aren't
Gotcha.
saying, sorry,
I understand.
we can't do that, and then losing some of them for that reason.
Right.
They said, well, I have to have some kind of a job, so I'm just going to go somewhere else, and I'm just not going to work with you guys on this.
Right.
Anyway, that's really the only clarification I needed, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. A couple things. So first of all, I'm really excited about this. I think we've been wanting to go year-round for a while, and this is actually a very good entryway into that because it's a relatively small group, and we can do a better job of kind of testing what works and doesn't work. The two things that I would like to just recommend, one is that as we go through the process, that we designate someone, even if this may be the management analyst, Francesca, I'm not sure exactly who would be best, but to do, or the counselors themselves, to do an ongoing assessment of what's working and not all the way through. So this is more of a live loop experience. So by the end of the year, we better understand whether or not the way the program's designed is actually something that the young people themselves feel like is helpful to them, but also so that we can marry that with the results and really look at where we may need to make changes to the program. Does that make sense as
Absolutely,
yeah.
yes, thank you.
And then the second thing is that it would be interesting also to, with this particular group of young people, to compare the summer experience with this experience, because they will have now had a little more interaction with our teams and the two programs to get their thoughts on, based on those experiences, what would they change about the summer program versus the year-round.
Yeah, I like that. Okay.
And then finally, you know, I really appreciate that what's so interesting about your approach is that we're really digging into the much harder to serve group. And so I also wonder if, in addition to, just to follow up on the point that Dave raised, in addition to the employment counselors, whether or not we could partner with one of the community colleges to give us somebody dedicated to these kids to focus on academic counseling.
We definitely have the foster youth liaisons placed at every community college,
Right.
and we definitely partner with them to support our young adults in the community college.
Do you think there's a way for us to highlight with each of them these particular kids? And again, in part because I think this is such a good opportunity for us to learn, you know, what if anything we can be doing a little differently. And the reason is, I just want to focus on something that Dave said that I thought was really interesting. So we have, as you know, a number of former foster youth who work for the county.
Yes.
And I had an opportunity to meet with one of those foster youth who's really doing a good job of promoting into the county leadership. The challenge she's having is that now that she's been with us for almost, I think, maybe eight years now, that she is recognizing that she doesn't have the college credits it takes to move up to the next rung of work, even though she's got these skills. And one point she raised to me was that at the time that she was making a choice about college or work, that there was a heavy emphasis in our programming around being sustainable, like self-sustaining, like being able to take care of yourself. And so she thought she made a very informed decision at the time about choosing one path over another, and in fact thought that's what and I'm being very collective, our programming was saying to her, no, you've got to get on your own 2 feet, and this is the best way to do it. And so she came back to me and she said, I took it as direction that would apply to me personally. I had no idea that over my lifetime what this would cap me at, because what she did was she looked at what the promotional opportunity was, how much money she could make over the next 20 years, even if she never promoted again, and it was a big difference in salary. And it's making some hard choices for her in terms of staying with us. That is all to say that I think it would be important for us to better understand how the young people are interpreting what we're telling them and get that real feedback from them. I thought it was very interesting. And by the way, when she came to me, she wasn't blaming us. She was more making an observation and trying to understand now what were her options. Now, in my mind, because I'm 50, blah, 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 she's still so young that I was like, oh my God, you have time to go back to school. But for her, it was like a long time. And the younger you are, the more a year is like 100 years. So in any case, if we really could dig into that, I'd want to understand that, because I think it will help us do a better job of customizing our input to a young person versus philosophically across the board saying X is always better than Y, because we don't know that it is. But it would be good to get their thoughts on that. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And this will be coming to the board. Do we need to take board action for that management analyst? I mean, for all of it, for all the money?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so this, Bob's like, yes, I do not have this in my budget. So we will then accept the report, we'll receive the report, and when will this come to the full board? I actually should know that. Maybe it was in my notes and I didn't see it.
I don't think they know yet.
Bob?
So we don't have a date yet, so we need to do some follow-up on our end.
Okay, so my objective would be, it would be great if we could hear this just from a timeline perspective as early in November as we could. In part because I know mid-year budget adjustments and all of that have to happen in that January, February timeframe. And even if what you're recommending is here's an idea and the board needs to, even if Jeff says, like, I'm not ready to bring this forward, I do think the board needs to hear this in part because we've talked about it so much. Not just Dave and I, but one of our other colleagues as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Thank you. That was an excellent report. Okay, so we're going to move on.
Madam
Oh,
Chair.
Susan, I'm sorry. Susan, please come forward. And I realize that I messed you up on item 10. And so what I'd like to do, Susan, is give you time to speak on both items now.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And thanks for catching that.
So I'm going to start with item 10 then, since that got moved over to consent. You're going to be receiving a report from the Department of Child Support Services related to grants. And as you know, for grant funding, you've got to comply with the law. And my personal experience was that in 2015, when I was representing myself in a 6-year divorce case, and I was the custodial parent for a minor child, I opened a case with DCSS, and I was assigned an attorney. And at that time, I was up against my husband's lawyer, Brad Baugh, and they had multiple experts, and they had access to discovery that I had been denied from our 2 farming corporations. My husband has been hiding money in our farming corporations, and he has been illegally paying labor contractors that are involved in trafficking. And that is supposed to be an issue in this county. I couldn't get it talked about. I couldn't get anybody to look at it, and I spent everything trying to get it. The DCSS lawyer had the power to get that. And in July of 2015, I thought, yes, I'm going to get a DCSS lawyer to come in and get the discovery that I couldn't get as a pro se mom. And the DCSS lawyer didn't come. And the judge proceeded anyway in the case without lawful notice to DCSS, which requires 30 days. That judge was Mary Ann Grilly. She also filed an order after 90 days, and she falsified her payroll affidavit in that same period of time on my first support order. Our district attorney has an obligation to investigate public corruption. He doesn't do it. I reported this to John Chase. I reported all the information that my husband and his attorneys were hiding, and John Chase did nothing. He's in charge of our public integrity. He is now investigating the county council and the issues related to Hirakawa. And we have a problem, and we're non-compliant, and our children are suffering and not getting the support that they need. So that's my comment on item number 10. And now I'd like to start my comment on number 4.
Great.
On number 5.
Item 5, yeah.
I'm sorry, item 5. You have spent a lot of money on management audits, and I have reviewed those audits in great detail. One is on the Family and Children's Services audits. And the number that startled me in that was that 59% of the 26,000 calls to help from children or about child abuse in our county are answered, only 59%. And that's of the people that call. A lot of people don't know the phone number and probably aren't getting through. And as Scott Largent has told you over and over again, the county pays for numbers and advertises numbers where nobody answers the phones. They're not staffed. That's a problem. And you know about this problem. You know that children who are trying to call about child abuse are not getting answered. Currently, you have a situation which you won't discuss because it's an ongoing investigation. But that situation has landed in our family courts where the court files are public. And that situation is that the Victim Services Claims Manager was engaged with an improper sexual relationship with a subordinate. The Victim Witness Program took everyone from Family Court Services, from Silicon Valley Faces, which was identified in one of your management audit reports as having irregular accounting practices. They took all those employees without a background check and without doing their due diligence, and they hired those people in victim services. The claims manager, whose case is now public record in our court files, which you always say you don't want to have anything to do with, was married to somebody who is employed through the Child Abuse Council. They're now in a divorce, and she is alleging domestic violence. And I have those files, so if you want to seal them up or cover them up, they've already been disseminated to local reporters. This is a problem. You're not doing your job, and you're wasting taxpayer money, and you're not protecting children. This is a committee that is supposed to protect children. You would have the money to provide services for foster children if you looked at those management reports and you did what you were supposed to do. And I'm asking you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll move that item to the full board in the November timeframe and get Dr. Smith's feedback on that as well. And then we're going to now move to item 7, and this is the Children's Health Assessment Recommendations and 2019 Children's Health Improvement Plan. As this group gets settled, it's a relatively large group. What I wanted to do, if I could, is Rafaela here? So I wanted to just take Deb's out of order for a moment and just make a comment. One is, let me just see if I have public comment on it. It's item 8. I just want to see. So we don't have public comment on item 8. So I want to just take it out of order real quickly and make a couple comments. One is, this is an excellent report. It's really, the graphics, the pictures, and the format are excellent. It's super easy to read. I feel like I understand a lot of the work we're doing, and really just want to applaud all the hard work of that you did. It's excellent. The one thing I wanted to just say to John, just to Dr. Smith, one of the discussions we've been having is, based on the work that you're able to do, is whether or not we ought to look at creating a position that can work on economic development with a big emphasis on employment countywide, because we have humans that really want to get to work, and we're really looking at how do we develop relationships with these larger corporations where we could have an ability to move people in more permanently. And so what I want to do is ask Supervisor Cortese to accept the receipt of this report with a request to Dr. Smith to give us feedback, off agenda is fine, about how he would like to approach economic development, and whether or not he's still, because he was thinking about this, so I don't know where he is in his thinking, whether or not we're still thinking that we ought to be bringing in someone who can really consolidate all of the different kinds of economic development programming we're doing. And this report just kind of inspired me to think about it, because it was just so well done.
So moved.
And I'll second that, and we'll move that with the request to Dr. Smith just to update us on his thinking. But thank you. I didn't want to keep you, because really all I wanted to say was, well done. All right, thank you. All right.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Christine Rutherford Stewart. I'm the Senior Healthcare Program Manager over Community Health Assessment, Planning, and Evaluation within Public Health. I'm very pleased to be joined by a number of our partners today that have been working over the last year or so in response to the findings that came out of the 2017 Children's Health Assessment as we move into an implementation phase for this report. So attached to the documents is the plan that covers next fiscal year, and our partners will briefly introduce themselves and speak to some of the major items in terms of the structure that we've put in place to support this work and the status of where we're at today.
So my name is Kathleen King, and I'm with Healthier Kids Foundation and the Santa Clara County Office of Education, and I'm very fortunate to get to bring the first slide forward. We want to really thank the previous president, Supervisor Cortese, for asking for this 2015 Children's Health Assessment. Almost a full group of children, a whole generation have been on Healthy Kids, and this was a way, I think, to be able to evaluate how they were doing and looking going forward. And one of the supervisors here named this county, Santa Clara County is Kids County, which I absolutely agree with. It's the first county that really looked at children as a whole in the state and really looked at their health. And usually I'm the one that presents what we're not doing right, but I would like to say out of the first study that was completed, the demographics was looked at. And since the beginning of the Children's Health Initiative, we have gone from 1 out of every 6 children not having insurance, and on the east side, so it was almost 50% of children not having insurance, to now we're at 98%, or 1 out of 50 that does not have insurance. And every time I hear that statistic, I like to clap. So I think we need to give a, because two of these supervisors were the ones that helped put that together for children. And poor health has gone from 18% of children down to 4%. So I think the effort around this and the second children's health assessment helped us kind of coalesce about what issues are still there. And as Supervisor Cortese said, to look at concrete next steps, which are coordinated efforts in partnership, new strategies, aligned services. So if we go to the next slide, many of those on this list are well known. They're well known in the work they do, but we want to thank the board for putting Christine on to help us get organized. Many of us have known each other, but now we're doing this all together, and I think that's a really critical step to how we can all share our information. We're looking at this as a whole, and we're leveraging each other's efforts. So you can see everyone up on that list. And I think that's the end of my part.
Good morning. My name is Ton Do, and I'm with First Five. In support of integration across the 7 priority areas and other key partnerships serving children and families, a coordinating committee, which you see in the middle of the slide there, has been established to guide and monitor the systemic implementation of the Children's Health Improvement Plan. So it's important to emphasize the word systemic because we have many initiatives and many partnerships. And so this coordinating committee is integral to a systemic approach to serving children and families in a holistic way. This committee aims to promote collaboration and communication across the 7 priority areas included in the plan, in addition to engaging other key partners who promote and support children's healthy development. The coordinating committee is made up of key leaders from the original Children's Health Assessment Advisory Committee, the convening partners for the 7 priorities, the Whole Child Initiative, the Cross-Agency Services Team, the Kids in Common Children's Agenda Network, School-Linked Services, and Universal Developmental Screening Initiative to promote communication and partnership between these efforts. All of these efforts share a holistic approach to addressing the needs of children, youth, and families, and present opportunities to leverage resources and align and reinforce each other's strategies for greater collective community impact.
Good morning. I am Dr. Mary Ann Dewan, the County Superintendent of Schools for Santa Clara County. And I would like to speak with you this morning about our aligned structures and partners. In order to really successfully address the whole child need, you have to have a whole systems approach. That also means systems improvement work and systems coordination. To discuss this approach, we decided that it was essential to leverage existing plans, partnerships, and resources to look for places where we overlap and overlay, and opportunities to reframe and focus our work. For each of the priority areas, the convening partners have helped to integrate the planning and implementation activities into their existing structures to promote alignment with the established community priorities and strategies, and to utilize resources and build off the efforts that were already underway. We also wanted to engage existing coalitions or work groups to accelerate our progress. Each plan section references these work groups, aligned plans, and community partners that have been engaged in the development of the plan through these various structures. The Children's Health Improvement Plan is aligned with 13 community plans and 22 community coalitions or work groups. As one example, in the area of early childhood education, the Santa Clara County Office of Education and First Five Santa Clara based the Children's Health Improvement Plan Early Childhood Education section on the 2017 Santa Clara County Early Learning Master Plan, and also provided additional detail through the Children's Health Improvement Plan planning process to set action steps, timelines, and performance measures to the general strategies in the Early Learning Master Plan. Ongoing coordination of activities occurs through the Strong Start Coalition and First Five's Quality Matters Executive Cabinet, which is chaired by Jolene Smith and me.
Hi, I'm Tracy Weatherby with Second Harvest, heading up community engagement and policy. Some of you have worked with Cindy McCown, and she retired recently, and so I'm succeeding her in that position. Overall in the plan, the focus of the plan was to really work on policies and systems because we want to make sure we have the broadest impact and have the most sustainable models available. So as we developed the plan, we purposely set 3-year goals, but 1-year action steps because we want to make sure that we have the chance to recruit new partners, try new approaches, and iterate each year to improve our effectiveness. For an example, Second Harvest collaborates with school districts and the Board of Ed and the YMCAs and Parks and Rec and libraries and others to improve low-income student access to school meals and summer meals. And we're using federal dollars to leverage that effort. But as we progress, we may be back to work with some of our other partners or with parts of the county to ask for things like a resolution supporting breakfast after the bell, which greatly increases student participation in breakfast and therefore their nutrition, or in helping us figure out which agencies might be able to be sponsors for summer meals so we can increase the sites where students can be fed during the summer. And also, I want to put in a quick pitch. We hope you can all join us for the Hunger Action Summit on October 16th at Santa Clara University. There's going to be a lot of innovative approaches highlighted with regard to school hunger, college hunger, community health settings, and thoughts about CalFresh. So we'd love to see you.
Good morning. My name is Walter Wilson, and I'm here today representing the Black Leadership Kitchen Cabinet. Excuse me, and I'm one of the partners in the equity and community participation segment of this report. Highlight approaches to integrating racial equity and community participation in the plan and structures in the coming year. While 6 of the 7 priorities focus on particular health or community issues and involve partners working in that sector, the Children's Health Assessment call to action elevated racial equity as a priority that cuts across each of the other priorities. In the current Children's Health Improvement Plan, the racial equity section has its own strategies and action steps, but also includes training and support to integrate racial equity into each section of the Children's Health Improvement Plan. Utilizing tools in use by Public Health and the Office of Cultural Competency, specifically the GER model, training has been provided to all the convening partner organizations on structural racism, and training on the use of racial equity toolkit is planned to be completed by the end of the calendar year. As I said, tools such as GER, which is a government and race equity programs that are currently underway. In early 2019, we will review and revise the implementation plans to apply the racial equity tools and ensure that a racial equity lens has been applied to all plan sections, and revisions will be developed as needed along the way. Additionally, our evaluation plans will include a focus on racial disparities and selected outcome indicators and analysis of data for priority target populations, including young people involved in the foster care system and in the juvenile system. Finally, over the last few months, with the support of the new American Fellows through the Office of Immigrant Relations, we've been consulting with community groups to identify best practices and opportunities to partner with grassroots efforts underway to promote community participation in the Children's Health Improvement Plan. I want to just talk for a minute about this new American Fellows program, which has been phenomenal. We've had the opportunity to work with some really great people who are DACA students, who are interns and worked here, and we really hope that this program continues because the individuals we've had the opportunity of working with were really stellar and provided great input into this process. We are working to establish ongoing opportunities for community members, including youth, to guide the development and implementation of our work in the 7 priorities with a focus on building community capacity and share power in decision making. And I just want to close with this. When Renee Santiago asked me in 2015, 3 years ago, to participate in this study, I don't think I had any gray hair. But that's not a reflection of my esteemed colleagues, but it's this is important work, and I didn't realize it was 3 years until I just asked somebody just recently, because it's so important. You don't look at time, you look at the content and the element and the outcomes of what we're trying to accomplish here. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Dana Bennett from Kids in Common. We're the backbone organization for the Children's Agenda. Results, focusing on results. Evaluation and monitoring is a critical component of the Children's Health Improvement Plan, and it's important to assess implementation progress and coordinate efforts to achieve results. The Children's Health Improvement Plan includes annual process measures and 3-year outcome measures and targets to promote accountability and a focus on the use of data-driven strategies in future iterations of the plan. We are in the process of building these measures and others into an overall evaluation plan that illustrates how work in the 7 priority areas, as well as other community efforts, contribute to the long-term improvements in outcomes for children and youth in Santa Clara County. Key elements in the evaluation plan will include using data to address disparities among priority populations and focus our equity work, incorporating concepts such as social and community impacts on individual outcomes and the importance of systems coordination, and utilizing a common set of long-term outcomes to promote coordination of efforts across the 7 priority areas and to break down silos of activities and outcomes. The Children's Agenda is actively collaborating with Public Health and the Coordinating Committee to align our community-level measures using the Bill of Rights for Children and Youth as a guiding framework for success and in improving the lives of children and young people. So we're really, with the Children's Agenda, we're really excited about the alignment and the fact that we're using data to drive this work and inform decision-making.
So just to summarize briefly the next steps that we have planned for this year, we are in the process of finalizing our evaluation plan by the end of the calendar year. We will be getting into a quarterly cycle of monitoring the implementation of this plan and reviewing the data. As Walter mentioned, the racial equity training has been completed, and we're moving into the toolkit training that will occur over the next few months. We're working to establish those mechanisms for direct community, parent, and youth participation in our work, continuing to support convening partners in implementation of the strategies, and then looking at how we can carve out more work specifically to address the needs of systems-involved youth, both to evaluate differential outcomes for those populations, but also to target strategies to meet their needs. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
This is your baby. As I was just saying to Dave, this is your baby, so you start.
Well, might have started off that way, but it's all of theirs and everyone else's now, I guess. A lot of great work going on here. Just a couple of inquiries on this one. I guess the first one is sort of a comment and an inquiry. I very much appreciate all the integration with among these areas, these, I guess, 7 areas, and to see schooling services and cross-agency service team institutionalized sort of into a role and not just being out there in a nebulous way, I think is really, really important. So, a shout out to everyone for getting that done. It seems to me that schooling services can play an extraordinarily important role with the area that Walter Wilson was just talking about. We were just looking, we actually received on consent today. It's available for everyone to look at, but today's schooling services report, and actually is one of the first ones that really gave us a lot more granular data on race and ethnicity in these referrals. So obviously if a kid has an issue, sleep disorder or something, we want the teacher to refer them right in there, irrespective of race, ethnicity, and so forth. But you can already see disproportionate numbers in those referrals relative to the population at large. And it's great that we're transparent enough in our report to lay that right out. And I'm just thinking, though, now with this larger piece and this larger integration, that is really a great partnership to take the expertise of all these folks who are on the race and equity side in this endeavor and really sort of put them even more purposefully together with the schooling services folks, the coordinators that are on the ground who get a kid on referral out of a classroom, and just, what does the debrief look like on that, from a race and equity standpoint. So we don't want to slow that process down, but to come in afterwards, and do something much more intentional, in terms of a debrief on what that history looked like coming in. Was there a way to intervene even before schooling services in a softer way, so that Latino child or that African American child actually wouldn't have ended up in a referral in the first place? That is the downstream, I think, we want to, the downstream impact that we want to eventually have is that, the numbers are proportional because we've intervened so early in such a almost indirect way that we just aren't having those referrals. But when you talk about institutional bias or racism, which you did, Walter, I'm looking at you in this report, in your presentation, if that exists, and I believe it does in some places and areas and situations, why not jump in right there at that point, where the third grader, the fourth grader, the fifth grader is referred to our schooling services coordinator and say, okay, let's zoom in now and take a deep dive and see if we can figure out what happened there, and does it have anything to do with institutional racism or bias, or is this a case? I think you can start separating out, case studies like that. Right. Just as a comment, and take it as a question if it's already being done, or if you think it's a bad idea, or if you want to respond, any of you. I'll just put my second issue area out there real quick, and then you can respond. Diabetes, Supervisor Yeager and I were just involved in the launch of the No Sugary Drinks campaign, and everyone's been working on that for a long time, especially Supervisor Yeager. But those numbers continue to be staggering in terms of the percentages of our kids who are going to end up with type 2 diabetes if we just forecast and do the trend analysis and we don't intervene somehow. I'm not suggesting that that's not inherently addressed here, but I think, when you talk about integrating major priorities of the county, it should be called out. We should be constantly reminding ourselves that that's, to the extent we don't have ubiquitous universal screening yet, we need to get that done. To the extent we need to get the word out through all these partners, that has to be a huge priority. Otherwise I think the numbers are a third of all children and half of the Latino children are going to end up with type 2 diabetes. If we don't make it the kind of priority that people are actually thinking about every minute of the day. So if it's here somewhere and I just missed it, please also let me know about that. But those are my only two comments. It's just a really, really encouraging, wonderful work and a great presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to the race equity piece. Race is the overarching issue, but we're looking at all segments of disparities and equity, gender, preference, and others throughout as part of our work. So that's it's not just race, but it's everything that falls under it. The other thing is, I agree with you. This is an opportunity for us to dive in and really begin to attack some of these things. And I want to point out something that's happening. You may or may not be aware, but some of the work that we're doing, communities of colors are doing right now with social services through Bob Minicani and Deborah Portia Usher, Francesca Larray. We're actually engaging, really and doing a deep dive into what's going on in the county and trying to work from communities with the affinity groups in the county to begin to address some of the issues so that we can begin to affect how people are being served, through a racial lens and try to address some of the problems that are there. And similarly, the same thing has happened with public health. I mean, I've been fortunate to be able to work with some really wonderful people in public health. I don't know where they found Christine, but she's just a rock star. I mean, really, she came aboard and kind of in the midst of this, and just continues to push us forward. So I wanted to thank her for this. Thank you very much.
Any other comments from the panel just in response to what Dave said? Yes.
Yes, I wanted to speak to the Supervisor Cortez's point about early intervening earlier. So as the representative of First Five, we partner with Schooling Services a great deal and all of the other partners here. But we know that the students in Schooling Services, they will most likely have a little one, and so those families then get referred to our Family Resource Center, where they can get a developmental screening with the Evidence-Based Ages and Stages questionnaire. And then so this can detect developmental behavioral health concerns as young as 2 months all the way through 55 months. So then we can catch any concerns early on, and then they're referred to our Kid Connections network of providers, and they receive intensive assessment as well as home visiting services to support them. So by the time they get to preschool, transition to kindergarten, that they would have the support that they need, and not have and have the concerns remedied. And then also with the diabetes point, First Five has an early childhood obesity prevention strategic plan, and we partner with many folks here, including Kathleen King's Healthier Kids Foundation, and of course the Board of Supervisors supported with an inventory item for the 10 Steps to Healthier You and Sugar Savvy workshops for the little ones and their families, and we have bottle filling stations throughout the county in partnership with Public Health Department and the Water District, and then of course we partner with Public Health Department. They recently gifted us physical activity kits, and we trained our Family Resource Centers and our family child care home providers to support physical activities indoors, especially during the winter months.
Thank you for that. I guess Kathleen wants to respond.
And if I can just summarize in terms of where these items connect back.
Could you just hold on one moment? I'm going to let Kathleen go and then come back to you for summarizing.
I'm trying to figure, there we go. So there's a lot of data now on the diabetes that education is actually even more important than exactly where food is. There's some really strong data coming out about that. And through the county and First Five and some others, we've now had over 10,825 participants to the 10 Steps to the Healthier You, which is the prevention part of the county's intervention program. And I would like to send you some testimonials on that, because we share data like crazy, but the testimonials really say it's sinking in, and especially for those family daycare providers, it's been pretty impressive, the feedback they've given. One lost 25 pounds, one started walking every day after work, another, they don't drink any soda in the house anymore. It's really, I think the diabetes, the best fight is going to be about education, and when the parents have the children as young as possible.
Yeah, that's great. And that's exactly the sort of billboarding that information in the reports. I'm just giving it such a huge priority for the county, as all I was asking for. Obviously I get invited to all the all the launches and read the reports and everything, so I knew that work is going on, but I just think it's, I know, and you can't put every priority in, otherwise none of them will be a priority, but it's just such a huge priority, as you've just indicated. And I think when we launched the diabetes campaign here, the idea was to, as quickly as possible, to do education and screening really universally, almost like, the children's insurance campaign, health insurance campaign originally. Why don't we screen every child in the county, given all the partners we have and the extended reach that we have with all our community-based partners? Doesn't mean everyone's going to go back and follow that referral, that every family is going to chase that referral or that information back to a physician or a healthy diet or whatever. But at least if we can say everybody, was put on constructive notice. You were screened, you're told. I mean, I think that's an appropriate job, appropriate goal for the county, short of eliminating the disease altogether, which would maybe be for the next step. So all that said, just
did you want to summarize? And then Sparky,
just
I know
looking for
I'm gonna make some
it
comments
to
and
be
then I'm
in
gonna call you.
marquee lights. That's all.
Yeah.
All this work that you're doing. Thank you.
And just briefly to respond to the previous question about schooling services, Cha and his staff have been great in connecting in, particularly in the priorities around food and housing insecurity and bullying prevention. He and his staff have been participating in the structural racism training as well. And so we'll continue to explore ways that racial equity can be embedded in the work that schooling services does and how we can support that. And again, on sugar sweetened beverages, it's not explicitly listed in the plan at this point. It's somewhat embedded in some of the needs assessment and planning work that we have going on within the access to care and the oral health priorities. So those are at a more formative stage, but sugar sweetened beverages is definitely a priority within that. And so we expect the next iteration of the plan will address those topics more directly.
Great. I have some comments too, but Sparky, you look like you're jumping out of your seat. So I'm gonna let Sparky go and then I will.
Thank you. Sparky Harlan, CEO, Bill Wilson Center. And I also was on the Children's Health Assessment Advisory Board, so I was glad to see that we put a priority on race disparities in health, but also housing as a social determinant was one of my big areas. And what I wanted to talk about is just my sense of going upstream on the housing side and how we look at the goals here for the homeless youth and young adults and the families was really low. So if we're trying to end youth and family homelessness by 2020, which probably not going to do, going from 160 units of housing for youth and young adults to 200 in 3 years is dismal, frankly. And on the family side, going from 450 to 500, we should be doing that per year or more. Because when we look at the chronic side, we are going big and bold. So my proposal will be to really move the focus for youth and families over to the social service side. It makes sense for us to look at families and children as that whole picture. We do the housing for foster care and extended foster care on SSA. And on the federal level, the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act and family focus is under HHS, not HUD. HUD does sort of that deeper end. So my proposal would be, let's look at Bob. He knows that this is kind of my thing that I've talked about. It's really moving it, a lot of the supports to SSA, and for us to combine the housing we're doing for the youth and families more upstream. So I'd like to be able to talk more about how I could see doing that.
Great, thank you. Couple things that so first of all, thank you. And Bob, I want to give you a chance if there's any perspective that you want to bring to this. But I think just kind of 4 areas that I'm really interested in us diving into. And one of them is that we've talked a lot about prevention. And after being here for almost 5 years now, and frankly, being, serving on the city council and being like you on 1,000 committees, I have been so many times, I feel like, part of sort of tilling the soil one direction or another to try to plant something we think is going to last for generations. And one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about lately is how important prevention is going to be relative to sustainability. And in particular, I've been thinking about that because right now the county has been investing a lot of resources in the community. It's probably one of the few times that we've had money to invest, and so we've been able to do things that are really outside the norm in terms of being able to expand programming. And I'm mindful that at some point that slows or stops, and then we go backward again. And so how are we positioning ourselves that when we have to trim back, which we will, that we grow back in a way that's really built off of evidence-based practices. And I don't even mean that in a cliche way. I literally mean that we're trimming what we're learning doesn't work. We're protecting that which we think does, and that lays the groundwork for the next generation of folks to do better than we have done. And I'm wondering how this fits in to some of the thoughts you've had around prevention, and really that being a core aggressive component of how your department leads the county in the future.
No, I mean, I think as you said, the prevention work is where we realize, you know, we can have impact, and it's always been frustrating to us to always arrive at the scene when people are in their deepest level of need. And I think what's exciting about this effort is, you know, the getting together of the many, many different constituencies, programs, perspectives that are out there. And I think that's some of the work that we have been working hard on in terms of redeveloping that community connection and making sure that we can leverage everything that we can. When you talk about the funding piece, I think our biggest challenge is the vast majority of our funding comes from the federal government through very structured programs. And as we said, that's shifting a little bit on the child welfare side. There's a new perspective of getting into the prevention conversation. That's still not expansive. We already do more than what the federal changes are doing under our waiver, and we want to continue that work. So we're always going to be challenged, I think, broadly in that sense of we know where our money comes from. We know what we need to comply with. And where we want our flexibility, we need to rely on the county and other sources of funding to have those flexible streams. And I think that's going to be our biggest challenge is when times are good now, we can have these conversations, we can move ourselves upstream like we want to be, but how do we do the sustainable piece of this is the big question, and where does that, how do we build it? And if we know we need to put it aside for a little bit when we weather a tough period, how do we know we can rebuild that quickly and keep some of that infrastructure in place? We bring staff on board, we train them, we invest in them, and then, at a point where the economy swings again, we have to say, well, we're going to jettison all that experience. That's really tough. That's really tough. So I think it's a timely conversation. I don't think we have the answers exactly, but that's exactly our anxiety in moving forward in this, is that whatever it is that we do and build, we want to figure out how we sustain it.
So one of the reasons that I'm pressing this is that I do think we have to find the right way to have the conversation around prevention and sustainability, and I don't know the right way to do that, because I think there are a lot of people who are interested in having this conversation and then being able to really apply it to the work that we're doing on a daily basis. So I'll just say I want to give some more thought to that. The other two areas I just wanted to highlight is that, and this kind of speaks to the sustainability component, and that is how we get to scale. Because I do think that the reason prevention is so interesting, and I think, Kathleen, the point you raised around the promise of education being a really good way to start to address issues is really critical for us in a whole number of ways. So in the next couple of months, we're going to be bringing forward the Intimate Partner Violence investment plan, and that's going to have a lot of prevention in it. We're going to be bringing forward our foster youth programming. We're going to talk about that at a meeting later today. That's going to have a big emphasis on prevention. And I really want to just make sure all of this gets linked together, Bob and John, through your departments and the county exec, so that we really are like front loading some of these activities, and frankly that we're tagging the prevention work with those intervention pieces. And I think that's one of the reasons, Dave, your work on schooling services has been so critical, because to me that's still pretty front end, right, if we can really continue to invest in those areas. So that being said, we're going to be doing RFPs and RFQs for a bunch of work that should be knitted to what the plan that just came before us. And so when these RFPs and RFQs come forward, I'm going to want to understand, and I'm going to ask you to highlight for the board how this connects to, how all of these plans are really going to connect to each other, particularly on that front band of work, which is the prevention and intervention. If we're really focused on intimate partner violence and violence in the home, that really says violence in the home, period. How does this plan connect to all of that? And then on the back end, what are the big benchmarks and community norms we're going to see change that demonstrate we're moving in the right direction? Because I think that it's aggregate data, but it's nonetheless, it's data that we've got to be able to test in 3 to 5 to 10 to 15-year increments, or we're missing the opportunity. Thank you. I appreciate you all hearing that. And then the last thing I just wanted to say about this is that, I'm really struck by the amount of effort and work that you all put into this. And it's just such thoughtful, meaningful work that I do really think it helps us be ready for next opportunities. And one thing that I really want the county to think about in our partnerships with all of you is that for any of you who've ever had a child tested for a learning disability or a mental health challenge or a neurological test, the length of time it takes to get a test, to get the results of the test, to connect it back to the school, it so defeats the purpose of the testing that it's almost mind-numbing. I mean, it could drive a normal person to being not so normal and pleasant. And I mention that because I think that we have relied on a few for-profit and nonprofit organizations to do this testing, and the funnel to get through that testing and then get back to our partnership with the schools is way, way, way too small. And so one of the things I want us to think about is whether or not the county needs to play a leadership role in bringing the ability to do that broader, deeper testing in-house with more access for the public in a much broader way, so that school districts aren't sending people to 2 or 3 nonprofits. And an example I would give is one of the best nonprofits we have in the region is the Children's Health Council. They are amazing. But you get in a very long line, and depending on your ability to pay, the line is longer or shorter. And I think that depends on what the families can afford. And again, by the time the assessments are done, a child could be so much more chronic that then we're going to invest more money, and then they're going to be back in a classroom not able to function. They're more behind. And now we have a report card essentially telling us everything this child needs from 2 years ago. So I'm more saying that really, Bob, this is a question really for you, and I think a question to have a discussion with the hospital to determine whether or not we need to figure out how to be a center of excellence around that kind of testing, so that when we get a referral, frankly, from the family resource centers that are really, they're a good assessment, but that's an assessment, that we are really able to move a child to getting the kind of full testing that they need, that rigorous testing, and we can work with the schools. Because the other thing is, frankly, the county is going to be on the hook for a lot more resources because we're not partnering with the schools when they could be funding the other partnership with us. And then it, again, defeats the purpose of sustainability and helping that child succeed. It's just like a really bad cycle. So, I'm happy to do something more formal as a referral, but I really do want your best thinking as to the environment that the availability of these tests and whether or not it's a role for the county to play a greater leadership role in. I'm particularly mindful of that as we look at developing the mental health, more structured mental health services through Valley Medical Center, that it does feel like this is pipeline work that we ought to take a look at. And I'm happy to have a longer conversation, but I just, again, I want people's thinking before I go put a referral out. I don't want to do that. I'd rather have your best thinking on that. So if we can include a request for a discussion around the linkage to prevention in any way that you think that could and should come back, meaning that it could be included in the staff reports as they come forward. And second, whether or not we had to take a look at being a center of excellence around these deeper learning disability tests, neurological tests, and mental health tests at a much sooner, embedded in the county so that we have access to it. Because really this is about creating a bigger pipeline for access to those services in partnership with the schools. Dave?
Yeah, this report, I think you specifically requested that we get a report like this. So in some sense, it was kind of a one-off, meaning I don't think we established a quarterly or an annual. Maybe we did. I'm not sure. But well, I'm just thinking, if nothing else, that we have give the team an opportunity to come back and sort of supplement this.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Or
Do you all
do a
want to take a
follow-up
look at what I
report.
just raised? Okay.
Because I don't think they otherwise have a vehicle for bringing it back.
Yeah, that's why I
aside
was
from
sending
you
it to these guys, but you're right. I'm happy to do it either way. Would you all, I guess I should ask one of you, would you prefer to chew on these requests and bring them back, or would you like us to ask staff?
For the last request that you mentioned, specifically related to how disability testing and integration with the schools and that process, I'd love the opportunity to think about that with our team partners and with the leadership at the county to think about the systemic integration of that and, as you suggested, put our best thinking on it and maybe embed it as part of some of our recommendations and measures moving forward. And that may also then lead to a need for a referral down the road. But I feel like a
How long
preliminary
would that
step-
take, Marianne? Because I've been thinking about this for a couple of years, and I'm feeling anxious now.
I don't know the answer to that question of how long it would take, but I think we haven't talked about it at all as a children's health assessment team. And I think we'd appreciate the opportunity to do that and then respond to you, I think, within the next 6 to 8 weeks, but I'll defer to Christine on that.
Great.
Yeah, I think this work ties in pretty nicely with what's included in the plan in terms of universal screening and starting to expand the scope of what we would be talking about in terms of screening issues and look at systemic issues there. So I think that can be a foundation that we can build from with First Five, having a history of playing a leadership role in that area. So we can talk about what next steps and a timeline would look like and get back to you.
You know what? I'm sorry, Cindy.
Go ahead, Walter.
The Black Leadership Kitchen Cabinet, we just completed our education study for pre-K through 12, and some of these very same issues that you're talking about, particularly around special needs children, it's particularly challenging for poor and disadvantaged people to even get these tests in. It's difficult for people with resources, even more difficult for people without. But I'm wondering about the model. Is it best to bring it in-house or just to have a broader network of organizations or that do this type of work? The other thing I wanted to say is I'm glad that excuse me, it's Monday Night Football. I'm glad that you're looking at that we're not squandering these opportunities we have right now to provide resources to the various elements of our county, and particularly for our children. And when I think about what you're talking about, having long-term sustainability and that we're investing today really for 10, 15 years from now, I really look at the Children's Healthcare Initiative that was done and as a model, because I think that program was put in place years ago, and it's still, the benefits of it are still serving us today. And I think that's a good model to look at in terms of how we invest today and look and have great outcomes for tomorrow.
Yeah, and let me just say all of that's really good feedback. Let me say one of the reasons that I'm interested in taking a look at the best placement for it is because some of the opportunity the county has, I think that other agencies may not have, is the ability to get to scale and also to have the mechanism for funding. Because one of the problems with this kind of testing is that often it's treated as educational testing instead of health testing. So even insurance is, distinguish between that. And I think we have to get that out. I think that is such a false line. And in some ways, we got to pop it out of one into kind of the whole person care model approach that we're taking. So that's one issue. The second issue is I do think that one of my concerns is making sure that we create cleaner pipelines and faster pipelines for high need families, foster care, homeless families. Like right now, the idea of people getting in line when they're not resourced, and we have a very, it feels very dog eat dog, and it shouldn't. Like that's just not the way services should be provided at a county level. So that's part of the reason I'm pushing on this. But so Kathleen, I'm going to take you, and then I'm going to wrap this part up just to say if you want to come back in 6 to 8 weeks to the committee, I think that would be great. And I'd love to hear both you know, any of the issues that Dave raised that you might be able to respond to, or issues that I've raised. Kathleen?
Yeah, I think this part is very complicated, and if it can be health-related, you know, the health plan has a requirement they have to get children into a specialist within 21 days, or it gets escalated. That's a lot of what we do, is escalating it. But you have transportation issues. The health plan, no limit on transportation for a Medi-Cal that goes through the Santa Clara Family Health Plan. Not a lot of people know that. But there's also the families, their timing. So it gets very complicated around, can you get the specialist, can you get the child there, and can the parent get out of work to go at that time? So I do think it's pretty complicated issue that's not just access. It's all of those together.
Yeah, and I get that. I mean, I talked to enough people, Kathleen, I 100% agree. But that, to me, means what's odd to me, this is the same discussion we're going to have about foster care in a couple of hours, which is access means more than one thing.
Yeah.
Period. But all of the programs that I've just laid out have 9 to 5 during the week availability, and that's what we do right now. We do not treat this as it's an emergency. And by the way, every one of these therapists, because we have so few of them, are working full-time there, and they all have private practice. So guess what happens? What happens is it takes eons to get reports back. I mean, the system's a mess, and frankly, everything we do is complicated, I guess is my point, but it can't be so complicated to help a kid. As you know, Kathleen, this is what you do every day. So thank you to all of you. I know you help children all day long. I'm going to wrap up, and just to Dave to say, we'll have a report back on this particular discussion 6 to 8 weeks. My staff will work with you to coordinate that. I'm going to ask staff to take a look at the prevention issues as we have new reports coming to the board, just so that we're being able to coordinate those. And then I would just recommend that we get some sort of regular report overall on this process to this committee. And what I would like to recommend is that maybe we do annually, Dave, so that we're able to, or 6 months. What do you think?
I think the overall report annually is fine. I think, you know, for example, this referral, the 6 to 8 week thing, may lead to a need for resources, a contract to come forward to help this team actually do those deep dives, and that shouldn't wait a year. I mean,
yeah,
to your point, we've been waiting long enough, and bring those as ready, and bring them to us so we can recommend them to the board if resources are needed.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we're going to move on then to our verbal report from Bob.
Let's see, good afternoon. I just want to take a few minutes to provide you with some information and updates around our receiving assessment and intake center and just the latest work there. So at the end of October, the state had come to our location through CCL to further work on the licensing there. They did visit the facility and approved the facility currently, and work with the licensing continues there. We're working on a credential with the manager of the receiving center. She actually, I believe, did her testing yesterday, so we're waiting on the result of that. And we're also working on the fire clearance that had just happened too. So the licensure piece of the receiving center continues. As folks know, the final landing spot for the assessment center will be the East Valley Clinic campus. And over the past couple months, we've been working on the space requirements there, and have also worked on settling out the costing on that, so that information is being finalized and circulated. And lastly, what that means is we are working through an interim need for the location, and I would just say at this point that negotiations and talks are currently happening to work through that one last piece of it in terms of an interim location. And as I said, we're working on the negotiations of that currently. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. We have one speaker on yours, and that's Pam Noodleman. And then I have a blank card for item 13, so if you're that person, let me know. Welcome, Pam.
Thank you. My name is Pam Noodleman. I was married to a former prosecutor who hired Brad Baugh as his divorce attorney. And as a result, after a 4-year and 9-month divorce, I have no relationship with any of our 4 children that I stayed at home and took care of. I'm 69 years old. My ex-husband managed to get 90% of our community property. I hired a man by the name of Philip Erkenbrack to collect a $3.6 million judgment that I received in pro per without the assistance of the DA's office or any attorney. The DA's office was aware of what they were doing to me in family court, yet they did nothing. The DA's office is still doing nothing. I believe I'm a victim of elder abuse. I've spoken with Patty McCrae in consumer mediation, and I spoke with her over a month ago, and she's asked me to gather information for her. And I've contacted several of the dozens of people who have made complaints about this collection company. She said she would refer it to an investigator. My last contact with her was that he's harassing me. I am fearful. I'm afraid for my safety. I just spoke with Dale, an investigator, and he said, Patty had mentioned it in passing once. She has done nothing to help me. She had me go online, and suggested I have people file complaints online. Your website doesn't work. I've spent so much time contacting people, and your website doesn't work. The district attorney's office needs to do their job. Jeff Rosen.
Thank you.
Needs to protect seniors and
Pam,
families.
were you also, did you pull a card for 13 also?
Pardon?
Did you pull a card for 13 also, or was there someone else who did that? No? Okay, thank you.
You care about whether I pulled a card. Are you?
I'm sorry. I was asking if you wanted to speak.
I'm sorry.
Pam, I was asking if you wanted to speak on the next item.
Bob Coley, you weren't even paying attention. I was talking the whole time, and John Mills over here. What are you up there for? When I spoke with the investigator, Dale, the last thing he said was, well, why don't you gather the information? Why am I doing your jobs? I said, well, why don't you deputize me? And he laughed at me.
Thank you for being with us. Before you speak, did anybody want to speak on item 13? Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to give an update on a prior item that I reported on during my last verbal report to this committee, which is around the court funding allocation for child support courts. There has been a decision reached on that. I know that I had mentioned to the committee that we were fearful that we were going to have a significant cut for our 2 child support courtrooms, our commissioners, and our court staff. Fortunately, the decision by the committee is to recommend a decrease or increase of funding of no greater than 5% for any court within the state of California. So they're putting a cap on that reallocation, and that 5% range above and below will be used to apply to existing funds only. The funding changes are to go into effect 2019-2020 fiscal year. A couple of other requirements as part of that solution is to have case numbers to be reviewed every year to determine the need related to those funds and possibly have a reallocation. But again, there's a 5% cap on that change. So that allows us to appropriately plan and work with our courts to absorb that potential change. In addition to that, the committee will be convening on an ongoing basis to determine any additional recommendations. So with that, that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments? No? Then we are adjourned until, wait a minute, where are we adjourned to? Oh, until tonight. I was like, God, that date looks familiar. So till tonight at 5:30. Thank you, everyone.